crying. It's this thing that people do, often for emotional reasons, while watching melodramatic episodes of MasterChef.
He's doing this for kids.
It can provide a physiological release and offer an opportunity for emotional expression. But given that us humans are such social creatures, does crying also have a social function? Well, between people, crying has been found to be a key attachment behaviour. Researchers think it evolved because it helps us elicit care and comfort from people around us throughout life. Just the same as what babies do. Crying is a signal that helps us let other people know that something's up, in order for them to notice, approach us, and do something to help. But we all have different attitudes towards crying, and different tendencies towards crying too. Some of us cry a lot, some of us not so much. So what explains the differences? A very interesting study by Millings and colleagues asked people questions about their attitudes towards crying and their tendency to cry. That is, how often they tend to cry. What they called crying proneness. People had a few different attitudes towards crying, like crying makes you feel better, crying is healthy, crying is controllable, and also people had a downright hatred of crying. People prone to crying, that is, people who cried more often, identified the reasons was that they found something threatening, they had sad feelings, or they had joyful feelings. The other interesting part of this study, though, was that they also investigated the participants' attachment styles, specifically whether they were anxious or avoidantly attached. Quick recap on attachment styles. These are patterns of relational interaction that shape the ways we conduct ourselves around other people. Anxiously attached folks tend to be anxious about abandonment and are outward and expressive about their fears and need for others, whereas avoidantly attached people tend to operate on a schema that they need to get by on their own because other people can't be relied upon. They are more likely to detach and downplay their needs in relationships. What the study found was that anxiously attached people were more prone to cry, specifically because of perceived threat to self and sadness. These people reported crying more recently and crying for longer periods of time. This may be because anxiously attached folks perceive threats more readily and experience negative emotions more keenly, leading to a greater intensity of expressed emotion. But people who were avoidantly attached were more likely to not believe crying is healthy and generally report crying less. This makes sense, given that crying is an attachment behaviour designed to elicit support and care from others. So avoidant individuals probably perceive it as an unwelcome emotional display and a sign of weakness that undermines their self-reliance. Avoidant individuals inhibit and suppress their emotional experience, so they might find it relatively easy to avoid crying. All in all, we have different attitudes towards crying, which have been shaped throughout our lives. And this interacts with how often we might cry and what we expect it signals to other people. Crying ain't the bad guy here, but it might be handy to reflect on how we really feel towards crying and how those feelings can result in different dynamics of support and understanding within our relationships.